Hmm. Let me experience something else, something different. Maybe like I don't like really showing my face in videos. Uh, I don't know. I don't know why. I just don't like it. So, but I said it before in some of my videos, and I'm saying it now because it's becoming evident more and more. Um, what if the United States is in fact in collusion with Russia? What if, I'm not saying it is, folks, I'm asking a pertinent question because proof is in the pudding, and it's not what people say, it's what people do. And it just got me thinking, what if it is fruitful for the United States and Russia to keep people, to keep Europe down, scared and worried, and at the same time pampered in many ways? So Europeans don't get scared enough that they have to rise to arms, because we all know what happens when Europeans are concerned enough that they have to stand up for themselves and fight a foreign power. We all know what happens. We've seen throughout history. Every time this happens, it's a whole age of conquest from Europe. So we've seen it with Greece, with Macedon, with Spain and Portugal, and France at some level. We've seen it with England. We've seen it with Scandinavian countries when Christianity was encroaching. They started the Viking Age, right? So many people don't know, but they should, that the attack in Lindisfarne was retaliation from Scandinavians because Christians had destroyed um, a prominent place in Saxon lands, and Saxons, Saxonians were a vassal state to the Danish kings back then, to the Danish pagan kings. Yes, kings were a thing before Christianity. They just had a different system of kings in Scandinavia. They were elected kings, unlike in Christian countries that it's usually hereditary. Viking kings were elected amongst the most competent. It was a meritocratic society, actually. It was a caste society at some level, but they were based in physical attributes rather than financial or economical. They like you can read the myths, the formation of the three castes, like the Thrall, the Carl, and the Jarl. They literally define physically each caste, so it was per definition. It was a much more fluid caste society than, for instance, the Hindu ones. Um, but what if, I digress, what if the Americans and Russians are in it together? They pretend to be enemies. That's an old thing. That's kind of old school. Machiavelli already suggested that people should make their own opposition, so that way they control the power and they control the opposition. And Americans do that in their politics. They claim, like, the Democrats and Republicans are, according to Americans, the strongest parties, and they're strongest because they don't let any other political party participate in the presidential debates. And they have conditioned somehow Americans to actually agree with that and believe that somehow they are irrelevant and it would be wasting your vote that's the maxim I hear from both right and left in the United States, from both Democrats and Republicans. Um, you will be wasting your vote. No, not really. But I've seen from the American elections, I've been that caught my interest from the one that Ron Paul was running, that made me find some speck of interest in American politics, only to find out, appalled, how rigged the whole thing is. It's like being in South America in their elections, which I have been, and I have seen how rigged it is. And they do the same, and they go to lengths, because in South America, other candidates actually participate in the presidential debates. In the United States, I remember the Ron Paul election, where the other candidates, it was the Green Party candidate that called it out, that they were literally tied to chairs because they went there to participate. They wanted to participate because they knew it was going to be a big election and people needed to know, because the internet was making it really popular. Um, and they were tied up in chairs under, like, in the basement of the building, uh, while the presidential debate was running. And this has happened ever since. Every time other candidates try to participate in the presidential debates, they are blocked. They are not allowed in. They are banned, or they are tied up. It happened again recently. Um, so maybe, just maybe, the whole political system is rigged, and we know, well, we should by now, that candidates from the Republican, or politicians from the Republican Party, marry with politicians from the Democratic Party. So they dine and wine together. They all have some house or place in what is that place in the U.S.? Vineyard, something Vineyard, Martha's Vineyard, I believe. They all have houses there. They go to the same country clubs. They do the same things together. They are an elite, and therefore they wine and dine together. And they don't let any other political party participate in their presidential debates, because doing that would get the Americans' interest in something new. And if there is one thing that Americans are turned on by, is new stuff that they can collect. So in order to avoid that, they don't let them participate. They don't show them, they don't give them screen time that would equalize the presidential candidates. So seeing that already in American politics, how they pretend to be enemies, and the people literally believe that they are political enemies while they do everything together. Even the wild card Trump, that has mocked the Republicans and everything, and has raised furore. He is a Democrat at heart. Trump is a Democrat. He has democratic policies from the old school Democrats. He has spoken several times in defense of LGBTQ candidates, or not candidate, but cause, and he has vowed to protect them against radical religious people. And we all know who are the most radical religious people in the US. It used to be the Christians. It's not anymore. The Christians are but a pathetic, annoying shadow. And actually, that's a good thing. One day, if you disagree, please tell me about it. Let's hear you. Because I know that recent rise in interest in Christianity, where it came from. It came from Jordan Peterson making speeches because he's a a drug addict and he's trying to cope with his addiction. And there's one thing that drug addicts do when they want to try to fend off addiction, they resort to religion. So, because of that, Jordan Peterson, who was much more popular when he was preaching secular mindset, and he would refuse to talk about religion at all, which was a wise choice. I recommend everybody to do that. You'll have less enemies and less people disagreeing with you just because you don't share their own beliefs. And belief is the word. So, knowing that, now half of the people who are listening will stop listening to me or will disagree with me by default because I said something that is not even attacking anything, is just mentioning a clear fact about certain aspects of our current society. Maybe, just maybe, bear with me, Americans and Russians realized, hey, especially after those wars, right? Hey, if Europe is down, we get up. When Europe is up, we are down. So maybe if, because now Europeans are bankrupt because they had to fight this stupid war, because some socialist lunatic wanted once more to apply socialist mindset in the economy, and finding out that his economy was going to go bankrupt, he started invading countries to steal their resources so he could pretend to be successful somehow. Because it's usually the venue in socialism that unless they wage war, they are going to collapse, like they go bankrupt, and the country implodes, and the people revolt, and they tore the socialist out of power. So maybe, just maybe, this is the case. Maybe the Americans and the Russians realized that for them to be up after that war, they had to keep Europe down. And Europe was easily kept down because they were bankrupt, because the wars consumed everything they had, and the countries who refused to fight were usually swallowed by the fighting countries who just consumed their recovery from First World War in all possible venues. So Europe was broke. So maybe if we manage to somehow keep them concerned at the same time we feed them, maybe they are not going to be so belligerent, because we know what Europeans do when they feel threatened, don't we? When they are elites, not so much their people, but when the elites feel threatened, we all know what happens next. We are next. So, just a thought. And as the war in Ukraine still unfolds, after 11 years of the Americans flat out neglecting the treaties they signed with Ukraine, that I even heard from some Americans, oh, that's not a real treaty. Uh, recognition by signed, hand signed documents recognizing the territorial sovereignty of a country and vowing to defend it, boots on ground, as they are using this silly term nowadays, boots on ground if necessary. For 11 years, yes, you have forfeited. This is a treaty, and you have forfeited it or pushed, rolled down the drain for over 11 years now. Instead, we had this guy that went haywire, Trump, who started threatening his allies and Oh, by the way, I need to make a video about this foiled attempt to invade like gunboat politics in a civilized country. Well, it was worth a shot, but it's with no shots because other civilized countries made that a big no-no. I might make a video about how the US tried to invade Greenland, but that's for another day. But that shows the current desperation because the Americans were sure that, and the Russians as well, to be fair, that they would be able to invade Ukraine, split Ukraine between the Americans and yeah, Europeans. They will get a bone and the Russians. But that didn't happen because the Russian military was so corrupted that they literally sold all everything they could, and when and the soldiers, because they saw their officers and under officers selling everything, they just stopped caring about maintaining the machinery and the wheels of the vehicles. So when war broke out, the wheels cracked, and suddenly there was a line of 4 kilometers. They say 40. I, I don't believe it was 40. Yeah, more realistic, if you ever seen armies marching, 4 kilometers a vehicle line. Yes, that is very possible because they were like supposed to occupy Kiev and run from Kiev, who was going to become the central base for the Russian operations to all over Ukraine, and that failed miserably. The machinery was not properly oiled, let's put it that way, and therefore the first attacks, the Blitzkrieg intended, the what Putin deemed the 2 day special operations, failed miserably because most of the machinery, the armor and the guns didn't properly function, and that gave the Ukrainians a fighting edge. And in war, any small edge becomes a huge edge. And God knows what. So they went to plan B, that was to grind Ukraine out, and that failed too because somehow the Ukrainians kept fighting. So Russia, in panic mode, activated the US, their hidden alliance. I have reasons to conclude they have a hidden alliance. I don't have any documents. You won't see me running after documents, but call it a hypothesis if you don't want to call it a theory, because unfortunately, the CIA made that word a big no no in today's vocabulary. But call it a hypothesis. You can check to see if it becomes a theory. I'll give you that, so you can take credit for that. Let's put it that way. That the Russians and Americans are working in combination. And now they decided, because now Europeans are finally seemingly getting out of their hellhole situation, while the United States was going bankrupt, which it is bankrupt. It's not going, it is bankrupt. It has created a debt in the last 35 years. You can count, you can see where it started. I can pinpoint 35 years straight from when the American debt was in the billions to now, what, over 36 trillions? What? Has it surpassed the 37 trillions already? They are spending way more than they are making. The boomers, since the boomers raised the power, they decided to burn the national economies into drugs and orgies. It seems to be because the world economy is currently a mess. Especially the United States economy is a mess. It's just a living mess, okay? They can't pay it. They can come with excuses. Yeah, that's the job of economists. How do I know that? I studied economics myself. I know they are doing the job of an economist, that is to give excuses to why things are the way they are, but they will get better if you just do this, which usually doesn't work, but that gives the economist time to find other excuses. As an economist, you learn to find excuses to your company. That's what you do. That's what they pay you for, right? This is why you have to be so good in numbers, because then you can excuse the numbers of X company or X, Y, Z governments. So, or government departments. So, yeah, I have reason to conclude now, because it's becoming more obvious, because they can't hide, because unfortunately or fortunately for us, the or unfortunately, I don't know, because as you know, with me, I expose a problem and then I try to find solutions. I don't leave it only in the problem, because I don't want clickbait out of fear mongering, because that's good clickbait. But as you can see, my channel is very unpopular. So, like, nobody really is a follower, because I talk about a topic that YouTube has completely eliminated as a possibility. So those who weren't popular back in the 0 years, or the 2010s, are not going to be popular there if they talk about politics. Very rare. So you have to do what Deaf Noodles did, that first you make yourself look really stupid and silly and talk about stupid topics and celebrity gossip, so you get a following, and then once you get the following, then you can talk about serious politics. So well done, Deaf Noodles. You played your cards right here. I couldn't bother. My objective is not to be famous now. I know. I always knew I am at least 10 years far ahead, so I don't really care. 10 to 100 years, it depends on the ideas, on the prospects. And I've seen it happen, and now that I'm over 50, I have good reason to conclude that, yes, I can see far ahead, and things that I say usually become factual. So, and I dread this video, because what might become factual with this video, I'm not really a fan of, but needs to be said, so I can later on, 10 to 100 years from now, my clone can say, yeah, I told you so. Clone number 10, because one thing is certain, as soon as they make cloning popular, which they will, it's inevitable, as everything, okay? Even drugs now, they can't stop it. So if they can't stop drugs that actually harm you, imagine cloning that actually will enhance you. Um, because once they find the cure for any problem, because you can just, and I'm saying that ahead now, mark my words, they figure out that you can change organs in humans, so to keep them young, actually, by renewing the engine, let's put it that way. So they are just going to start changing physical parts in humans, like you do with a car, right, or a computer, that you just change the parts, you put new engine and everything, and it's good to run, and you give it a polish, and it's a really good looking car with new technology, more efficient technology. Or you can even keep it old school, have the old, kind of engine, but new, bright, shiny new engines and all that. Once they finally let the secret out, because it will make them a lot of money, and it will, oh boy, if you want to make money, that will be the way. What about something that enhances? They won't be able to stop it for long. So, And I know for sure they must have the technology by now, or they wouldn't be hiding it. So, yeah, you can be sure one thing. I will do crazy things with my body. I will do crazy. I will finally experiment with skydiving, which I find awesome, but safety first. So, yeah. But I dread to say what might happen because everything that I have seen that is happening right now, that has happened for the last years of this stupid war, meaningless war, but you see, it's like a game of chess. When you play chess, you learn really fast. When you get confident, you start losing the game. It's like a charm. So the U.S. and Russia finally got too certain of their own success, so they decided to push it. And well, it wasn't a good idea, was it? Because war is that thing that you never know what's going to happen. It ever changes, and this is why you shouldn't toy with it. Leave it alone. Remember, the sons of war, the sons of Ares, are Phobos and Deimos, right? And you do know what those words mean, right? You don't? Well, I'm not going to tell you. I know. But anyway, you say I don't. Okay, I'll name one of them. Phobos means fear, right? Masculine in classical Greek. It's masculine word for fear because it ends in os. So yeah, that's how much I know. So yeah, give me a cookie. Anyway, not a virus, a cookie. Anyway, bad dad joke. Bad dad joke. Bad. Anyway, I fear. I play because I fear what is going to happen now. And I'm not a man of fears because once you understand things, fears tend to vanish because you figure things out. Then there is no fear. But this one, because of sheer boomer stupidity and selfishness, which boomers are legendary for being selfish, might happen. So boomers already ruined the international economy, right? They ruined it. They screwed it up. They're lying about numbers. You say, oh, but China is successful. China is a communist country. If there is one thing you should learn from history, is that communists lie about their economy. They lie, okay? They have always lied, and they always will. Ceausescu was exposed. He was torn down because uh, the fares that they made to show to him, or they would be shot, right? They showed him those really lively, very good-looking fruit, right? Truth is, those fruits were wood and they were painted. So yes, that's communism. That's how much communists lie. And the reason that they lie is because if they don't, they are shot. They are called capitalists and they are shot, or agents of capitalism, something that Trotsky and Lenin used to call Makhno. Makhno, from all people, an agent of capitalism, mind you. So I am very concerned about what might happen because everything that I have expected has happened so far. So because everything that has happened that I expected has happened and it keeps happening, and it's actually worse than I figured because I figured that at some point Russia would realize, okay, that's not the time yet. Okay, they're ready. Okay, let's pull back. Let's do it some other way. No, because they have a big brain short guy with self image issues. I mean, come on, the picture of him, what, riding a bear? Self image issues, okay? He refuses to let go, as Russians usually do in a fight. Um, and the United States is getting desperate because they can no longer pretend that they are against the Russians, so which they are not. They are promoting the Russians. They have done since during World War. They let the Russians take the whole west or whole east of Europe. They literally, I'm not saying they did, I don't know who did it, but as long as somebody, either the Russians did or the Americans or someone in between, but they literally killed Patton because Patton was pointing it out, and seemingly they were concerned that he might run for presidency. And once he ran for presidency, well, you know Patton, right? He wouldn't do it because as he had to apologize when he was disciplining soldiers, he would have probably, they would make him apologize if he ever threatened to invade Russia, is my wild guess, because they killed him for it, because he was persisting in pointing out that Russia was a problem, not a solution. So they hid it pretty well, because even top staff as Patton was not fully aware. Maybe he was, and this is why he tried to call it out in a way that, he played the game, but he lost. So it is clear by now. It seems to be. Let's say that. Legally speaking, it seems to be right because so far I've been correct. So the United States is getting desperate because Russia now is was on panic mode. So they say, "Hey, U.S., oh, we are getting screwed here. We won't be able. You need to cut us some slack. Do something to divert, to try to sabotage the Ukrainians." And many people don't know that the U.S. shut down fighters, like because the fighters that they sold, they have to go through an upkeep, and that upkeep takes some hours. I think it takes half a day or something, because after some hours of flight, those American jets they need to be checked in all details and it takes around 12 hours. Trump ordered, and that shows how the United States is not capitalistic in any way, shape, or form anymore. Hasn't been for a long time, as other Americans pointed out, actually. Looking at you, Stick, Saxon, Hammer, pointed out since the 1800s or 1900s. He seems to be correct in that sense. They haven't been capitalistic for a long time. I would say during and after the Second World War, they haven't been capitalistic. They stopped being. It started being, let's say, fascistic, more of a fascist society rather than capitalist proper, because they started with the whole overregulation, and I heard that in some states they even started like something that wasn't. I'm not sure. I haven't seen evidence of that, but I remember evidence being presented to me a decade ago where they showed the numbers that the United States didn't use to collect property taxes. But I'm not sure about that. I don't know that much, but I remember the numbers. I saw it, and property taxes wasn't a thing in the U.S. and now it came around in the 70s, it seems. So correct me if I'm wrong. If you happen to be American and you know better about the topic, do tell me. Let's have a talk about it. And hey, unlike other people in the internet, I prefer conversation. But of course, if people poke me, I just love a friendly banter. Sometimes, not every time. When I woke up in the morning, I'd rather have my coffee. Thank you very much. I prefer conversations. So let's have a conversation about it. But as in so far, I have been correct. So the Russians failed the offensive. They couldn't split Ukraine. Americans tried to do it diplomatically. They couldn't split Ukraine. Trump got desperate because Putin was probably in his heels. And remember, Trump was broke for in the 80s, and he only recovered after he been in Russia, where he seemingly got a loan in the billions to cover his expenses, and then he started making money again. So I don't know the connection between Russia and Trump, but it seems to be pretty solid. And so much so that Trump tried to sabotage Ukraine several times over. Trump did try to shut down he gave orders to stop the upkeeping of the jets after they landed. And that's wrong because those jets didn't belong to the US, and the Ukrainians had bought, and bought with a big B word, they bought those jets from the United States. So, because of the contract, if you buy those jets, those fighters from the US, they have to continue to to do the upkeep of the jets every time they are used. So that's part of the contract, and this is how it goes. They bought it, it's theirs. So the US, or by Trump, through Trump, decided that no, they shouldn't, to make sure that the Ukrainians, because the Ukrainians were kicking the Russian ass as they were getting supplies from Europe, which I also have a bone to pick soon for not doing enough. But that's the European way. They only do it when it's too late. That has always been the case here. Maybe it's a good thing because they don't want to repeat the massacre, the absolute massacre it was of the Catholic versus Protestant wars that have killed so many people in Europe. They don't want to repeat that ever again. That's very wise of them. But sometimes, because of that, they also incur in the problem that they end up giving all power to dictators that then force them into war and eventually bankrupt all the countries in the process. So, with that, Europe lost a lot. They lost all the colonies, they weakened their power, right? So, they lost. And Russia and the United States catch up on that, and they decided to team up, despite playing to be enemies. So they get, the gossip from both sides. So one side go complain to them, the other side go to complain, the same side go to complain to the Americans about the Russians, and to complain to the Russians about the Americans. So they know also. That way they keep the information to themselves, and while they screw European countries. And sometimes you screw people by giving it to them, so they learn to become dependent. So that might have been the way with the U.S. Keeping their bases here and all that, so the Russians would pretend to be concerned and not attack. Um, Maybe it was a thing. Maybe it is a thing because everything is pointing towards that direction. Now, the Russians are getting more desperate. And they are pushing Trump, and Trump seems to be in their pocket. They are pushing Trump to take some very drastic decisions. I believe I have reasons to conclude, because belief is secondary to conclusion proper in my world. I have reasons to conclude that the Russians are desperate and they don't know what to do anymore, and they are having to ask for favors. And if you ask from favors too much from China, there will be a point that the Chinese will come and demand you pay back. So they're asking for favors from everybody. The Chechens, who used to be the major force of mercenaries, are kind of reconsidering because it's taking too long. And Muslims are a bit wiser than we give them credit for, because war is in their religious book. It's all basically about that. So, how to negotiate your position in war. So, yeah. And the Belarusians are faithful, of course. They have no choice, do they? But seeing the blunder and seeing how tides are turning, they might be reconsidering very soon. They might even consider eventually joining Europe as a whole. It's a matter of time, and it seems inevitable now, but again, it's war, we never know. So don't count on it because the US might surprise us. And because Trump tried already to invade an ally that's unlike the US, an ally that has spilled blood for the US in all the last wars that the Americans have been in. Danes have spilled their blood for Americans, for the United States. And it's a slap in the face of an entire country when Trump did what he did. And if there's one thing you shouldn't do is to slap a Viking in the face. It's a bad idea. They will play the game differently than other cultures. They would feign non-offense to offend you even further. It reminds me, but Denmark, they're just a little country. They depend on it. No, you got it all wrong. You do not know enough about the topic to know. And I'm not going to dwell into that because it might look like bragging, and I hate to do that. So I might know a lot about stuff, but to brag is something else, something different. It's pretense, and I don't play that game. But it reminds me of that story that did happen when Rollo, the Viking, right, was there in France, and he had been given Normandy to defend, to protect France against Vikings. And by Vikings, we all know they were Danes. They used to be called Danes, but the British are so sour that Denmark has ruled over them for over 250 years, and they never managed to rule over Denmark. That they came with the Viking thing, not to call them Danes, as English still do to this day. The English populace that lived in those areas still call them by Danes. So come on, England proper was called Danelaw, Danish law. You don't get more Dane than that, do you? As a colony, you are literally called. England was literally called Danish law, just to make sure. Uh, English themselves, the Anglo, they came from Denmark. If you don't know that, they came from southern Jutland, between the Saxonland and northern Jutland. They were there. They were like around Schleswig. It was called Anglo or Angle. So yeah, but anyway, I am digressing. Thing is, my concern is that since Trump already did that, and failed, of course, because then NATO was activated. I'll make a video about that eventually, because it was a disgrace. It was a mess. Trump was a mess. Vance was a livid mess, or as I like to call Vance, Stingray from Cobra Kai. But I think that the relationship between Trump and Vance is similar to the relationship between Silver and Stingray. It's literally that. I mean, watch Cobra Kai. It's very revealing about the nature of the generations. And Vance, and I was even in doubt, but no, it can't be. It's such, stereotypical. Is Vance a millennial? He should be a Gen Xer, right? No, but he doesn't act like a Gen Xer. Zelensky acted like a Gen Xer. When Vance started freaking out, I'm offended. I'm so offended. And then Zelensky, that I didn't like before that, Zelensky turned to one of his crew and said, "What's that bitch? Is he a bitch? What is that bitch talking about?" Oh, that is Gen X. That is a Gen Xer right there. What? You a bitch? Bitch. You offended, bitch? Oh, it was brilliant. And no, is Vance a millennial? And then I checked, and bang, he is a millennial. So yes, he fits the Stingray from Cobra Kai description perfectly. Even the kind of beard that millennials love to use. Oh man, Vance is the millennial. Whiny and provoking, but runs when. Oh, it's just. No, he doesn't run. No, he never run. No. Well, I'll make a video talking about the attempted invasion of Greenland, and then we talk. Anyway, so yeah, I'm concerned that Trump, given no choice, or to have his whole situation exposed, and God knows what that is. If you really think about it, it's no biggie, but hey, I don't know. But yeah, Trump declares war in to Ukraine. I'm concerned that this is going to happen. I'm really concerned. And somehow the mask will still not fall, because that would force Europeans to draw a position. And Europeans don't want to, because they don't need to. Not really, but they do really. But I'm very concerned that, because I've seen it being attempted, Trump has tried to say several times over that Ukraine is not doing enough, or even that Ukraine started the war. And that was so absurd that everybody in the world, even Americans, started saying, hey, wait a minute, we support you, but easy there, brother. What the hell are you talking about? You shouldn't lie that bad. We get your white lies. We think it's cute. We think it's funny, right? Yeah, you lie much less than the other ones, but that was a big lie. What are you talking about? That broke the immersion of this fake reality of the mass media. What are you talking about, dude? They were invaded, just for the MAGA Americans who still don't get it, because they don't care, until Putin takes Alaska, because he's coming for it. If he sees weakness, that guy, oh, he's going to delight on it. So I'm concerned that the United States of America will eventually invade Ukraine to, because I see the rhetoric already being played, to stop the war. To stop the war, as Trump promised. He promised to stop the war in 24 hours. He will stop the war, and he will try. He will try to pull that gimmick, because the propaganda is already out there, correct? That he would stop the war in 24 hours. So it's already ringing in the ears of especially MAGA people. So he attempts an invasion of Ukraine at 24 hours, because Putin thought it could be done in 2 days. So Trump will attempt to do it in 24 hours. He will probably fail. It will have consequences around the world. And from that moment on, for now, I cannot determine what will happen next. Like, there are some main venues it would go, but I won't go that far for now. I'm focusing right now on what will happen next in Ukraine, because it seems, right, you have to deal with variables in a scenario like that. They are not maxims, they are variables that you have to consider. A lot of things can happen, so you have to check each variable to know for sure. So I'm just throwing some variables. I'm not even throwing the conclusions yet. The variables are those. Trump will eventually choose, as he backed a bit, but now he's returning to the rhetoric that Ukraine is not doing their share, despite the fact that Ukraine went as far as to Look, anything that Ukraine did after that is 50% less max at its peak than to give all your nuclear arsenal to your former invader, tormentor, torturer, and killer. Ukraine gave all their nuclear arsenal to Russia. If Ukraine had the nuclear arsenal, that they would have kept much better than the Russians, because one thing I'm finding out about Ukrainians, the Ukrainians I have seen coming here to Europe, is that they are very hardworking. They have this although they are not, but they have this Protestant mindset of Northern Europeans. They have that in them. So they come here looking for work. They want to work. They first want to work in their field specifically. Like the area I'm currently in is the countryside. So here the Ukrainians are looking for work in farms. They want to work. It's strawberry picking, whatever. They want to work. They want to have a job. And they have expertise, unlike other foreigners I have seen. They are usually good at what they do. They have literal experience in professions. So when they don't find work, you know what happens? Some of them try a few countries before they go back, but they return, and it's the women and old ladies with the children, right? Like family members with their families' children, right? Grandsons and granddaughters. That's usually the Ukrainians I see here, and they are looking for a job. They don't want to be in social security. As Northern Europeans, they deem it beneath them. That's like giving up in life for them. That's like admitting you are a failure, and they don't want to do that. They don't do that. Like, sure, I'm sure you can find one exception or two, but the exception does nothing but to prove the norm, to prove the rule. Because I found, to be fair, absolutely fair, I found one person who was trying to live at my expenses here, claiming those lame things that she had several. But then again, it might have been the truth, but because we've seen so much from so many foreigners that they cry a lot of problems and they don't have half of them. How can you say that, Jen? How can you say that? Well, because I hung around them. I hear them laughing about how they manage to fool the system, how they are taking advantage, how they make the women, yeah, they talk like that when they are not in front of you, okay? How they make the women pick up a glass of water for them. It's not that they are thirsty, you see. It's the act, because of some of those religions. It's the act that they make you do that. There is something about making you carry water for them in a specific religion. You can see a speck of that in that movie, Lawrence of Arabia, where the city, I think it was Damascus, was catching fire. And then Lawrence was organizing things as Europeans organize, and he was organizing it by tribe, as every tribe is basically a regiment, correct? So when he put some tribes to carry the water, they refused to carry the water because no man from the tribe of whatever tribe is going to carry water for another man. So they have this thing that they see it as, like you are a slave, or they're bitch, to use American colloquialities. And they refuse to do it. So there's a little game there about that, right? That they play with people, especially people who don't know their game. They want to make them bring water to them, whatever that means in their culture. I don't know yet. I will eventually dwell in that, because I'm getting curious as time goes by, and Apparently, European politicians are not interested at all in helping the European population live their lives in peace. So I myself have been attacked by foreigners, so I know what the people are going through because I went through that. So I know what's happening, and it is happening. And no, it's not rage bait. It is happening. I've seen it myself happen to me several times, happen to people I've seen several times. So it is happening, and it's a terrible disgrace. And our politicians are endorsing them. So they're promoting them, they're funding them. I'm not sure what is happening yet because I have other problems to deal with, but I will eventually dwell in that. But for now, I'm concerned that Trump might invade Ukraine or bomb Ukraine like they did with that airport that they asked the Russians. Remember, Trump didn't wage wars, but there was this event that, according to media, one of his daughters asked him to do that, so he did it. Come on, do you believe it? One of his daughters asked him to bomb. This is so absurd. Only Americans would believe that. His daughter asked him to bomb an airport, a military base or military airport in Syria, and then he asked the Russians that were in the region to remove themselves so they could bomb the military airport. And then they bombed the military airport. I'm concerned. Better not give Americans any ideas, but since Trump has done it before, so he has done it before, and he has been threatening Ukraine and saying a lot of nonsensical stuff against Ukraine. He's starting to claim again because he got so bombed back that he had to stop doing that, but now he's coming back to it of saying that Ukraine is not doing enough to stop the conflict and all that. I'm concerned that in order to give Russians the edge that they need, because they lost it a long time ago, they will bomb Ukrainian facilities, not the Russians' facilities. They're going to bomb the Ukrainian facilities and somehow try to blame Ukraine for it because Ukraine was refusing something when Putin doesn't even keep the treaties that he himself puts. And it was a dumb thing that Ukrainians didn't bomb the shit out of Moscow during the military parade because allegedly China asked them not to. Yeah, communists would ask you, they work together until one of their factions rise to power. Then they eliminate all the other communist factions. Doubt me, check their own history. I mean, just Russian Revolution, just go nuts on it. See what happened there. Once the communists got the power, they started, a communist faction got power, they started eliminating the others. Then a faction leader that survived the whole thing eliminated all the other factionaries from the former faction that was in power and so on and so forth. It's madness. So I have reasons to conclude that there is a great possibility that Americans will bomb Ukrainian facilities, claiming that the Ukrainians were not willing to cooperate in the peace efforts, to try to give Russians a desperate edge in that war so they can finally split Ukraine between the Americans and the Russians as it was intended. Because it seems clear now that the Americans have no intention whatsoever of really supporting Ukraine for real. This money, all this money that allegedly the US is giving Ukraine Ukraine has to pay back. Trump already made that clear. Trump made that clear. There's no doubt about it. Ukrainians are owing Americans money, and they had to negotiate their production, their future production with the Americans, so the Americans wouldn't sabotage them. And I'm concerned that they will, because that's what Americans have been doing for the last 50 years. They have betrayed all their allies so far. Now they are trying to betray NATO allies. They didn't expect that NATO would make a meeting, exceptional meeting, and not invite them, which I believe seems to be the first time ever in the history of NATO that Americans were not participants in a meeting, in a NATO meeting. But this was necessary because the American president was threatening one of the NATO countries. So that's in their articles. So the technocrats there, they stuck to their articles in doubt. And that saved Denmark. It did save Greenland from a very, very gloomy fate, because I think I'll make a video about that, because focus here. The Americans, I repeat, because this needs understanding, and we've been so conditioned that it's hard to drill the most basic, simple information in the minds of people, especially those who today consider themselves intelligent. It's really hard. It's close to impossible. So you have to repeat it several times, because lies have been repeated so many times that people take it for granted. For instance, when Americans say, oh, voting for another political party is wasting your vote, why would they say that? Why would they say that? It's not. It's voting for what you conclude is correct. But there is an inner truth in that, there's a deeper truth in that, is that the Americans are rigging the elections, their own elections. So regardless of who you vote for, if it is not Democrat or Republican, it's not getting elected at all. They will never let it. Oh, not never, but so far they won't. But back to the topic, once again. I'm really concerned, because this is almost a reality. I can almost smell it. The Americans they're trying to blackmail Ukraine. They keep pushing, they keep forcing. And Ukraine is doing a fantastic diplomatic work with the US, because I wouldn't have half of the patience. I would have told the US to go away a long time ago. But maybe that might just speed the process. Actually, if Ukraine called out the US and told them to leave them alone, it might even stop what is coming. But because they keep trying to play ball with the US, what is going to happen is the US is going to bomb Ukraine. Military fields or whatever is it that is stopping the Russians from invading, the Americans are going to bomb it. They're going to sabotage, as they did with the fighters. That many Americans are denying. Oh, but they don't do that. They have no. What do they know? They believe that that voting for their favorite political party or for the ideas they want implemented in the U.S. is as good as wasting your vote. So what would Americans know after that? They are in a country that is in a never seen. It's in a never seen. Congratulations, United States. You really did it, right? They have a depth that was never seen in the history of humankind. That they won't be able to repay it. They won't. The US might split in 3 to 5 different states. If they split into 5 or 4, like if Alaska sets free, it will probably join Canada, because the other option would be Russia invading, because that's what the Russians want. Putin has vowed to take back, its original size, the good times of the empire, and that includes Alaska, okay? And Putin has vowed a couple of times to take Alaska back. So it's coming. And the United States shouldn't keep playing ball with Russia because, as it shows, Russia is very weak. It has been weakened considerably. So, because they overexploit their own population, they repress them to the brink. So, what is going to happen next is the US, much probably 90% chance now, 90% to 80% chance of the US blowing up something in Ukraine intentionally. So Ukrainians, in their eyes, cannot resist. They will keep resisting because they have international law on their side. And because of international law, countries cannot occupy militarily as Russia is doing so. All this war is nonsensic and really a loss of time, effort, human lives. But Putin is an evil dick, so, or rather asshole. Dick implied that he would actually be impressive in some way. No, 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 no. He's just the tin pot dictator that I don't know how he got that position there, right? It is probably the communist old guard is pushing him forward, promoting him, keeping him up there. He probably killed Gorbachev because when he started the war, people started gravitating naturally towards Gorbachev, who was the sane mind in Russia. He was the guy who actually could see things in Russia. He saved Russia. He saved Russia from absolute collapse and destruction. Gorbachev saved Russia in ways you have no idea. Some people complain, we had to fend for ourselves after over almost a century of subjugation that we were not allowed. So they probably eliminated all the competent people who could do Russia really great again. And so they fucked up, but they could at least survive as the biggest country in the world. So they could rebuild. Gorbachev saw all that. But he probably killed Gorbachev when Gorbachev was becoming relevant. I remember they started interviewing Gorbachev again, and people started, the Russians Russians are not people. They are lovely people. I had no problems with Russians to this day. Me and them, we get along very fine because they're very straightforward and they are not afraid of a fight, which I like. So I can relate to that. So there we have it. Now I'm too old for that shit, but again, right? Thing is, it's a real concern now. The Americans seeing that they won't be able to let the Russians win like by their own measure, they will eventually bomb the shit out of Ukraine in a 24-hour strike or something of the sort, right? They will try to obliterate all the key points of Ukrainian defenses and they will call it a day and they will blame Ukraine. They will try to blame Ukraine for that. And the Russians will try to invade with what is left of whatever is it that they have still. And it will be a disaster probably. And then we will have to recalculate all the new variables that this will generate. But it's 80% to 90% possibility right now that the Americans are going to bomb Ukraine. They are going to attack or invade or do something. Trump tried to blackmail, tried to push Zelensky around, but good luck doing that to a Gen Xer proper. It won't work. Worked well. He was too used of doing that to Vance. He tried to do that to a Gen X. It didn't work really well, did it? So yeah, I might be the first one calling that out, that the Americans might strike Ukraine, blow up something, drone something, and try to blame Ukrainians for it. It's going to happen, unfortunately. And the results will be catastrophic, and we will need to calculate new estimates from that moment on, because then the whole game changes. In what direction, we don't know. It will depend on new variables. But this is the direction that this is all going, because probably Russia and the United States are working together to keep Europe down so they can be up. Because if Europe rises, they might be down. It wouldn't have happened that way if they didn't push too far, which now they are doing with the Ukrainian situation. If they had kept the balance, but they didn't. So this is what is probably going to happen next. There's a slight probability that Trump realizes that suddenly he has a chance of escaping any responsibility, any debt he might have with Russians. And then he turns the table. But I find it hard to believe, because that will go still against the United States' interest. That is to keep Europe down so they can be up in their minds. I would love to see Europe as a superpower, so we will have. China is not a superpower. China is being used for a series of things. And when Europeans and Americans get tired of it, decided to quit, China is screwed. They will have no power at all. And by then, the populations that the Chinese are trying to suppress or take advantage of will be so angry with the Chinese that they will end up supporting Europeans and Americans. They would probably rather have a new colonial time. Oh, but we see all those anti-colonialist movements, and yeah, that's the shadow of the past. And if you're going to believe everything you see in the media, good luck with that. So for China to fail, all it would need is Europe and the United States to say, okay, we retrieve all our companies we cut ties with you financially, and then goodbye, China. And then China might need to suck from the places that they are colonizing, which they are right now. In Africa, as we see it, they are trying to buy everything using money that's probably unfunded. China might be in a massive debt because they build too much, and their buildings collapse, and everything that they're investing seems to collapse. So go easy on that, right? Go easy on that. Don't count on the Chinese. I do not consider them. I used to, but I do not consider them as a superpower right now. They're not. I mean, Europe, Russia now is going down. It's going down, right? Even if they continue the thing, it will never be the same again. Even if the Americans bomb Ukraine, sabotage, take over Ukraine, just invade flat out, and split the country forcibly, that will cause things you have no idea. You have no idea what would happen if that happens. New variables that revert to old time variables, that's not good for the US, because they are not like Russia, that they are right there. They are not. The US is broke. If the US wasn't financially broken, I would believe they could pull that out. But the US is financially broken, with the highest national debt in the history of humankind, and I don't know how they are going to get rid of that. What would probably happen, they would probably go through a made up civil war to try to avoid it somehow, and declare new countries that are actually the same. that would be a solution to kind of save the US from absolute disaster. But for now, they have to pull out. So they can't even play the game anymore as it used to be in the Cold War, that Russia tries to invade, the Americans send troops, the Russians pull back, saying angry words. And that back and forth that went in Germany, in Berlin, for the whole duration of the Cold War. The Americans could have played that, but they didn't. They wanted to split Ukraine. And I'm concerned they're going to, to do something really stupid in Ukraine, the Americans, to try to give the Russians the edge, to try to end the war in a way that they can split Ukraine. It won't happen like that. There's a slight chance it might happen like that. I would say a 25% chance it might happen if they bomb. It's a 90%, 80, 90% chance they will bomb Ukraine. The Americans will bomb Ukraine. But there's a 25% chance only that they succeed in splitting Ukraine if they do that. Because that will turn the tides all around the world. Because if there's only one reason that the United States is still in this, is because the whole world, some years ago, actually demanded that the people who signed the treaties with Ukraine kept it, or they wouldn't keep theirs. And they voted on it in the UN. And even Serbia, an ally of Russia, voted in favor of the resolution that those countries had to step in and stop it. And the countries they haven't stepped in, oh come on, giving away the old material, the old war things that they don't use anymore, that they don't even give away. It's debatable. They're doing business by doing that. But anyway, yeah, I talked for over an hour now about that. Tired of the topic. But it is what it is. It seems that Trump will attack Ukraine. And then we will need to calculate everything that happens after that, because there's only a 25% I conclude that they would succeed in splitting Ukraine if they did that. But in 24 hours, Trump will try to do something that's stupid. You watch and see. I hope he doesn't. I hope that the 10% probability, 10, 20% probability that he's not crazy enough, he's not stupid to do that, to please Putin, because it would be way too obvious that the Americans and the Russians are operating together against everybody else, right? I don't count on it. I usually count with stupidity wins, because it usually does. So that's what concerns me. That's what really concerns me. And it will be a horrible moment, because Ukrainian people are great people. They're hardworking people. They're decent people. And they are much better, I'm sorry to say, but based on what I've seen, even in terms of efficiency, they are much better in terms of progress than their counterparts. So that have to be pushed to do things. They do it. They were putting Ukraine in a top notch condition. They were like they were selling grains everywhere. Their technology levels were improving. They were improving as a country. Why stop them? It's so horrifying, so heinous. You know, that they sabotage good people. They sabotage the people who actually produce. They sabotage the people who actually achieve, the achievers, because the achievers are the ones who give us everything we want and we need. It's not the bureaucrats. The bureaucrats, they take from you and make it as hard as possibly can, because they want their paycheck. So yeah, it bothers me. That really bothers me. because I'm living in the border here with Russia, and I don't like it. I don't like what is being planned. And I'm concerned that they might even attempt to attack NATO because of the whole Denmark situation. I might make a video eventually about that. I'm very concerned about that because it seems that it's becoming feasible. But yeah, I said enough for now.